The current generation Acura TLX sedan launched just a few years ago in the 2021 model year. Acura has now facelifted the TLX for the 2024 model year, and I've grabbed the Type S, the quickest and most powerful version of the TLX, to review for a week so that we can check out whether those changes are worth your money. Let's take a deep dive into the 2024 Acura TLX Type S. So let's start off by talking about what's new here on the outside of the refreshed 2024 TLX. And honestly, Acura didn't move the needle too much. This was a handsome sedan before, and it's a handsome sedan now. You will notice that the interior of the grille, this mesh pattern, is new for the 2024 model year. I think it looks great, honestly, in the Type S finish with all of this black in the grille. You have your giant Acura logo that has some radars and sensors in it, and then you have your Type S badge letting you know that you bought the fast one. You'll notice that this color is new. It's called Urban Gray. It's sort of like a flatter gray, but it's not quite as flat as something like Porsche's Chalk or Audi's Nardo Gray. It does have a little bit of metallic in it. It's a $650 optional extra. They've also added a new color called Liquid Carbon Metallic, but I think this new Urban Gray is a really great look on the TLX. Now let's focus on the wheels over here. So there is a new wheel pattern for 2024. It's a 20-inch wheel as standard, and I think that the new standard wheel looks better than the old standard wheel, which had like a bunch of spokes. This is not that wheel, honestly. This is actually a wheel that you could get on the pre-facelift car. This is an optional extra. You can spend about $2,200 to get this copper finish wheel. That is going to keep the all-season tires, or if you want these Pirelli P0 summer tires, that is going to cost you a whopping $3,300. That's the only way to get the summer tires. You have to get this copper wheel. Kind of an interesting option that Acura went with there, and you get red brake calipers that are Brembo branded as well, no matter which wheel you get. You do have your Type S logo here. You also have these black mirror caps here on the side, and the rest of the TLX hasn't really changed much. Most of the changes are over there up front. If we come all the way here in the back, you'll notice that we do have our little black spoiler here on the trunk, our Type S badge, our Shaoud letting us know that we have super handling all-wheel drive. We do have quad exhaust tips that have some baffles in them as well. This is a really good looking sedan from all angles. You can get some like carbon fiber bits and bobs to bring up the price just a little bit, but I would keep it simple. Pick one of those premium paint colors like the Urban Gray or Tiger Eye, which is that cool gold that I personally love, and keep it simple. I don't know if I'd spend $3,300 on the copper wheels. Now it's time to move inside the 2024 TLX, where the changes, again, are kind of minimal. They've made a few key technology upgrades that we're going to talk about that make this a little bit of a nicer car than it was before. We're going to start with the seats. So you're going to get this pretty much same seat on the A-spec model as you are in the Type S. You're going to see up here, it actually says Type S here on the headrest. You can get these seats in either all black, you can have this red and black combination that we have here, or you can get white. It kind of is dependent on what exterior color you choose, but these are heated and ventilated seats. They are a little bit bolstered as well, but they are super comfortable. And now, as I'm going to take the camera, I'll show you some of the other more important changes. We do have a slightly larger screen than we did before. This used to be 10.2 inches. Now it is a 12.3 inch screen. It is still not a touch screen. You can control it using Acura's sort of remote touchpad here. I've talked about this in previous reviews. I don't have a huge problem with it. When you put your finger on like a certain zone, you'll see that your little cursor pops up where you put your finger. It like corresponds. It works fine. I think as long as you get used to it, it doesn't take that long to get used to. It's not a bad system. But then when you use CarPlay, which are now wireless, so you can use wireless CarPlay or wireless Android Auto, it switches so that this kind of works more like a mouse trackpad. It doesn't necessarily go exactly where you point it. So it's a little bit weird when you switch to one of those and the operation changes a little bit different. But I think it's just fine, and it's connected to a really good audio system, an ELS Studio 3D audio system that sounds great on these Acura vehicles. The other thing that they've done is they've upgraded the 360 camera. I do have one of the doors open there, but you can see that the resolution is just a little bit better than before. And the other big change that you'll notice here on the 2024 TLX is that you now have a digital gauge cluster that is also 12.3 inches. You used to have analog gauges here with like a nice red lighting. You might prefer the way the analog gauges look, but I think this is a really nice crystal clear digital gauge cluster. You can go ahead and change the drive modes here. Acura loves doing these really cool animations as you change the drive modes. You can see Comfort gets rid of the tachometer altogether. Normal has sort of a white finish. Sport, and then if you twist and hold the knob, you can get into your Sport Plus mode where you have the cool yellow tacks. That's a very historic Honda Acura thing. Really nice otherwise. I think that this interior overall is more premium than it is luxury. You do get leather and soft surfaces on everything, but the leather quality and the stitch quality just feels a little bit below what you might find in an Audi or a Mercedes or a BMW, kind of on the par of something like a Lexus or an Infiniti. So just something to note when you're looking at this car. It's not the most premium in the segment, but it does have a really nice cabin. Here in the back seat, you get just under 35 inches of legroom. For as long as this car is, the rear seat legroom is actually kind of disappointing. This whole platform that the TLX ride on is kind of compromised in the fact that it's a long car, but the interior space is not that huge. I kind of wish that they would have devoted a little bit more to rear legroom, especially given how large this car is. You do at least get rear air vents standard, and you have 2 USB-C ports to charge up your devices here. You also have a nice armrest here. You have kind of your basic cup holders in here, and you don't get a panoramic roof, which you can get on some other options in this segment. You just get a basic sunroof. And last but not least, just like the back seat, the trunk is actually kind of disappointing on the TLX. You get 13.5 cubic feet. It's not the smallest in the segment. The Genesis G70 actually has a little bit less than this, but there are other compact sedans at this price point that you can get to have larger trunks than this. So if you're looking for the most roomy option, the one with the biggest back seat, the one with the biggest trunk, it's not the TLX, unfortunately. All right, so let's get behind the wheel in the 2024 Acura TLX Type S. And there's not too much to talk about when it comes to powertrains because they are carryover from last year's model. The base TLX comes with a 2-liter turbo 4-cylinder. It gets really good standard power for the class, more than a lot of other options base engines, with 272 horsepower and 280 pound-feet of torque, going out to either front-wheel drive or optional super handling all-wheel drive. But we have the Type S, so let's focus more on that. This car has a 3-liter turbocharged V6 engine. It actually debuted in the TLX Type S, and you can now get it in the MDX Type S as well. It produces a much more healthy 355 horsepower and pretty close 354 pound-feet of torque. That is pretty class competitive. There are vehicles in the segment that have more with their twin-turbo 6 engines. You have the Genesis G70 that has a little bit more. The BMW M340i has a little bit more power, but this is not outside of the realm of what you're looking at for this level of performance. That is going out through a 10-speed automatic, just like in the base TLX, and the Type S does have super handling all-wheel drive as standard. Now I'm going to go ahead and put it into Sport Plus mode. Acura does not quote a 0 to 60 time for any of its vehicles. So it's not just because they're trying to hide it on the TLX Type S. They don't quote it on the Integra, they don't quote it on the MDX, they don't quote it as this. Independent outlets have gotten anywhere from about 4.9 to 5.1 seconds to 60. Let's see how it launches, why don't we? Ready? Brake torque. Ooh! Real snappy gear changes from that 10-speed automatic. Didn't really pin me in my seat though, not gonna lie. As I mentioned, there are quicker options than this in this segment if you're willing to spend just a little bit more money. So this V6, it sounds really nice. It definitely sounds a lot better than the 4-cylinder. It's not the best sounding engine in this segment by any stretch. You can get the Lexus IS 500, which has a screaming 5-liter V8 for a little bit more money, but this is a really sweet little engine. Now, this might be a front-biased vehicle, but I really love Acura's super handling all-wheel drive system. I'll go into a brief explanation of why. Basically, the car can send up to 70% of the available torque to the rear, which is quite nice, so it does feel rear-biased when you're really driving spiritedly. And then out of that 70% of the torque, it can send up to 100% of that either to the left or to the right. So it can kind of over torque the outside wheel, getting you around corners a little bit better. Now, in addition to putting it into Sport Plus mode, I like to push this little DS button for Drive Sport. So you get a little bit even more aggressive shifts on top of that if you don't feel like shifting it manually. One thing I want to give Acura a ton of credit for is I drive a lot of these cars that have a sport mode and even a sport plus mode above that, sometimes even a race mode. And honestly, it doesn't feel all that different from driving the car around in comfort or eco mode. This definitely does. It holds gears longer, it upshifts quicker, it downshifts quicker. It holds those gears a lot longer. It definitely firms up the adaptive suspension. It tightens up the steering. It does a lot of things, and it really changes the character of this car in a really good way. A lot of cars, the sport mode doesn't feel like anything, so I want to give Acura a ton of credit for making this feel like it actually does something. Now, the one thing I will say that I don't necessarily love on this car is every bit of the controls, from the steering to the servo controlled brakes, is they feel a little bit video gamey. So if you're the type of person that likes kind of very heavy, very natural steering feel and brake pedal feel, this does feel a little bit weird. Once you get used to it, I think it's fine. The pedal definitely is very touchy and sensitive at times. I would almost compare it to something like the Acura NSX supercar or maybe the GTR from Nissan, just something that's a little bit more digital than it is analog, where you drive something like the Integra Type S, which is being built at the same time by the same company. That just feels so raw and connected to the driver. Maybe at the detriment of comfort. I think this TLX is a much more comfortable daily driver. I think that you can drive spiritedly on the weekends, and then it kind of quiets down and turns into a normal car more of the time. It really just depends on what you're looking for. If you're looking something that's a little more raw, a little more visceral, a little more connected, I think that the Integra Type S or maybe some of the options in this segment might be better off for you. But if you're looking for a car that is good looking, very comfortable to drive on a day-to-day basis, but then also can get exciting when you twist a knob and put it into Sport Plus mode, this might be the better option for you. Now, Acura says it has tuned the Sport Plus mode a little bit more for 2024 to give it sharper throttle response, and I will say, it's pretty good. The in-gear acceleration is really strong. It does have nice long gears that don't really require too much downshifting. I have driven the car a little bit in manual mode as well, but I feel like you don't really need it. Like, I think the transmission is actually quicker when you leave it to its own devices versus when you drive manually. It's kind of the complete opposite of when I drove the Lexus IS 500. That car sounds amazing, but it just does not have the transmission tuning to let you get to those really high upper parts of the rev range where that V8 can really sing. But this V6 is so torquey, you don't really need to downshift as much, and the automatic can do just a fine job on its own. I think the biggest problem that Acura has here with the TLX, because the power is not too far off its rivals, it's just the TLX is a very heavy platform that it's starting off with here. This car weighs over 4,200 pounds. It's 300, even 400 pounds heavier than some of the cars it competes against, and that's why it just kind of feels big and why it doesn't accelerate with quite the 0 to 60 times as some of its rivals. You might not care about that. I personally don't care about 0 to 60 times. I'm all about the experience, and if you're willing to look past the raw numbers, just like how I said about the Integra, if you're looking past the raw numbers, you'll find a really nice driving experience here. The only thing I might caution you against, if you're the person who's really not going to drive this spiritedly most of the time, you just want something that's really comfortable, semi-sporty, you might as well just get the 4-cylinder a-spec model. The fuel economy of this V6 is not great. You're going to get 19 mpg in the city, 25 on the highway, and 21 combined. I'm pretty sure that the V8 in the IS 500 can get similar, if not better numbers. So for this being only a 6-cylinder engine, it's really not all that efficient, but it does drive really nice. So that was the 2024 Acura TLX Type S. Pricing for 2024 starts at a nice and even $57,000. So if you add things like the copper wheels and a premium paint color, you're looking at just over about 60 grand. Now that might sound like a lot of money given that this isn't quite as fast as some of its rivals, but it is far less expensive than even other Asian options like the Infiniti Q50 Red Sport, like the Lexus IS 500 F Sport, and much cheaper than the Europeans like the Audi S4 and BMW M340i. So if you're looking at pure value in this segment, the TLX Type S really jumps off the page as a stellar option. I'm not sure if it's the most dynamic, if it's the most driver-centric option, and it's definitely not the quickest, but it is a ton of value, lots of features, and remember, it does look great. So it really just matters what you value. I really hope you've enjoyed this look at the 2024 Acura TLX Type S. For more videos like it, be sure to like, subscribe, and ring that notification bell to be alerted of our latest videos, and check out carbuzz.com for all of my latest reviews. I'll see you next time.